Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Whalen. Dude, you didn't talk about it last week, but I'm glad you didn't. But now we can, since I've seen it. We finally saw Nosferatu.
Yeah.
I mean, not together, obviously.
No,
that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Dude, that shit is rad. Robert Eggers, man, he can't miss, bro.
No, not yet. It's great. Yeah.
God, let's hope not, man. Let's hope he never misses. Yeah, dude, I've been trying to convince Mom to go see it. Because you and I were sold just from the announcement alone.
Yeah.
That I was like, dude, yeah, I'm gonna see it. Like, I don't care. Mom said she saw the trailer when she went and saw Y2K, and it scared the bejesus out of her. Just the trailer. And she was like, I don't want to see it. It's too scary.
Too scary. Now,
well, then
I will say,
once Ashley... Oh, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, once Ashley and I saw it, I told her that we saw it, and I actually wanted it scarier.
Yeah, I could see that. To me, it wasn't super duper scary. I mean, that's not why I was saying it. I didn't care if it was scary or not. I was going just for vibes, but it was incredible. But I will say, though, for it being very scary, I saw an interview where they were asking Robert Eggers, like, is there any unconventional sources of inspiration for Nosferatu? And he looked and he said, well, it's going to sound like a joke, but Dracula Dead and Loving It.
You're lying.
No. And he said, and it makes perfect sense, he said, that movie highlights everything that is wrong with vampire and Dracula stories. So I know what to avoid in this one. Because if they're making fun of it, I'm going to avoid it. And I was like, that's perfect. I mean, of course. That makes perfect sense.
God help if Mel Brooks saw that interview and was just like, oh,
well,
fuck.
No, because it's all for parody, right? And so what Mel Brooks is doing is he's highlighting all the silly things that are involved in these Dracula and vampire movies and stories that are silly, or they don't make sense, or that are a little too campy or a little too convenient. And one of them is everyone telling, I guess it would be Renfield and Dracula, but everyone telling him not to go to the castle and him going to the castle anyway.
Yeah.
Is silly, right? And Robert Eggers just said, okay, well, they'll just speak their native language and Tom won't understand what they're saying. Problem solved.
Yeah.
And, it's little things like that he picked up from Dracula Dead and Loving It that is parodying all of these silly tropes that are in these Dracula stories that he's like, yep, I'll avoid that and I'll avoid that. And, it was the perfect answer, man. I really liked it. And of course, Dracula Dead and Loving It's hilarious.
I thought you were going to say the whole thing about Nosferatu showing up in SpongeBob. Because they did ask him about that. So
far, and Haley and I do not believe for a second Nicholas Hoult doesn't know what they're talking about. Because he goes, oh, I don't know anything about it. I'm like, bullshit.
Well, Willem Dafoe said the same thing.
Well, Willem Dafoe is my parents' age. I think...
Okay.
I think Nicholas Hoult is probably more likely to have seen SpongeBob.
That's true.
I think Skarsgård knew.
I just saw the one where, because it's Skarsgård and Willem, and when she brought it up, Bill was like, yeah, like, it's so funny, and Willem's like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to catch up on my SpongeBob then. Yeah, no, man, the movie was great. And then, like, what was even more wild to me was one of the producers on the movie. It's fucking Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, so
or Chris Columbus. Yeah, it's insane.
Okay. Do you know why?
Because I know I saw an interview with Robert Eggers talking about Chris, because they met on The Witch, right?
I don't remember when they met, but he said he was like a mentor. Like, Chris Columbus is his mentor, basically, for filmmaking. And which is kind of bizarre because their styles are not at all the same.
Yeah.
but I like that, Chris Columbus, is taking sort of his wisdom and whatever and passing it along to younger filmmakers. And they are digesting this information and not just copying and pasting what their mentors are doing, which I really like, because to me it's like, Chris Columbus directed, the Home Alone movies, the first two. And he also did Harry Potter
1 and 2.
1 and 2. That's right. He was supposed to do Christmas Vacation, but hated Chevy Chase so much that he contemplated quitting the business entirely and refused to work on the movie. He goes, this man is horrible to work with, that I can't, so.
Yeah, man, it was pretty crazy to see his. I was like, oh my god.
And
speaking of Chevy Chase, one last thing before we get to the episode. I'm sure you heard about this. What Chevy Chase said to Jason Reitman after he premiered Saturday Night. I'm assuming at a test screening or something. So I guess like he screened Saturday Night for obviously a lot of the SNL alums.
Sure.
That obviously he's showing that they're in the film. Well, apparently Chevy Chase came up to him and put his hand on his shoulder and goes, "Well, you should be embarrassed." And because he was talking about it on Dana Carvey and David Spade's podcast, and I think they were trying to soften the blow. They're like, "Well, Chevy, he really knows what's funny. Like, what a devastating thing to say to a director. It's kind of funny." And Jason took it pretty well. He was like, "Well, everyone has their Chevy moment, and I got mine, but also this is something I poured my like heart and soul into." And yeah,
it's unreal, man, because Chevy Chase is such a monster. First off,
sucks because he's so funny.
I've seen Saturday Night, and it's amazing. It's great.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, to me, it's reminiscent of Steve Jobs, where none of it happened, but it's all true. Because they took a lot of liberties with what exactly happened that night. They're moving stuff around. Things that happened a few weeks into the show, they added into this one, and just to raise stakes and to like keep it as intense as possible, right? Because you have to feel what it's like to not exactly know what you're going to do in 90 minutes, but you have to do it anyway. Which is crazy. And honestly, everyone should watch the movie just for J.K. Simmons as Milton Berle. I mean, that's it. That's all you gotta do. It's worth the price of admission, but the movie's great. Chevy Chase he's the one who should be embarrassed that he acts this way, and that's how people see him,
Yeah, especially, like I said, I think Chevy, I think he is a fantastic comedian, and everything I've seen him in is so funny. But yeah, I just hate that he is a huge asshole, man. Like, I don't get it. And even more particularly, I don't understand the actor who plays his wife in all the vacation movies,
Beverly D'Angelo.
Willingly the fact that she willingly stayed on for the sequels after they kept like cycling through all the kids is baffling to me.
God knows what he did to them. I'm sure he yelled and berated them and treated them terribly. I know,
man. I know, man.
Because you are right. He is very, very good. He's very, very funny. And like, I've seen Christmas Vacation 1,000 times. I've seen Fletch, and it's fucking awesome.
Ashley. Christmas Vacation is one of Ashley's favorite Christmas movies.
Of course.
So we literally have to kind of like put that information of Chevy Chase being an asshole to the side so we can enjoy the movie. Especially because, also, one final thing for Chevy Chase, and then we'll start the actual episode, is he's also is a good actor. I mean, he's a good actor and a good and like, it just,
Yeah.
It just sucks,
It does.
knowing that he's a big asshole.
Yeah.
But anyway, with that being said,
Right.
so Jeremy, would you like me, because it's my pick,
Yeah.
to remind everyone what we're talking about today?
Please do.
So everyone, since you tuned in yesterday, or last week, because our Bob Dylan episode on I'm Not There is really popping off, kind of interestingly.
I know. Yeah, we're doing pretty well.
This week we are talking about the dark comedy from Martin Scorsese, After Hours. Was this a first watch for you as well?
Yes, I had a few years ago. I had started it and either got distracted or did something, and then I never got back to it. Sometimes I do that, and I need to quit doing that. I need to just stick with it when I start something. And I liked what I saw. I just got distracted. Again, Jesus, I don't remember. But I remember thinking it was very, very strange, very funny, and not at all like a Scorsese movie, really.
Yeah. There's something that we were talking about today is that, and what we've talked about with some of his other films that we've done over the course of the show, which is he's really good about picking movies that aren't, considered a Martin Scorsese movie. Like when we did Hugo, that technically family-friendly movie. Right. I say technically, it was a family-friendly movie. And then we did Shutter Island this season, and Shutter Island is a psychological thriller. Like, I think what I've come to learn is I really like when Martin pushes himself and does something out of his quote unquote wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Because as per usual, he always kills it. Like it's.
Yeah, of course.
This movie was awesome. Like I'm not gonna lie, I was a little worried. I was like, man, what if I don't like this, man? I've never seen Martin Scorsese do a dark comedy before, and it's so funny. It's a lot like, what it kind of reminded me of, dude? It reminded me a little bit of Inside Llewyn Davis, because the Coens consider that a comedy because they find it so funny the more and more he's just beaten down the whole movie.
Yeah.
And I saw the comedy with this is that Paul is he just gets more and more beaten down as the film progresses. And it's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good comparison with Inside Llewyn Davis, because you're right. It's just one failure, one misfortune after another. I think with Inside Llewyn Davis, what makes that different is I obviously think it's a drama. I don't consider it a comedy, but I think it's because we know a little bit more about Llewyn. I don't know anything about Paul, really. I just know that's true. He works at a corporate office. He has a mid-level job. He's not really that into it. And here's the thing. So Scorsese is incredible, and he's so good at showing us what we need to know, telling us everything we need to know about Paul for the story. Very quickly, very efficiently, and without taking up too much of our time. Because when he's at the office, when Paul's at the office, and he's talking to that guy from Star Trek, and Paul's kind of listening, but not really, and he's sort of just looking around the office at all the mundane, menial things that people are doing, and he's noticing subtle details of the office and of the people around him, and he kind of just seems like he's bored and he's longing for something different. And when he's at his apartment, he's just clicking through channels on that really weird switchboard thing. And he's just trying to fill the void, and then while he's just at a coffee shop because he can't stand being in his apartment for too much longer, that's when he meets Marcy. And then here comes the opportunity to kind of step out of this mundane life and do something exciting, right? And what ensues is this crazy surreal fever dream nightmare that Paul finds himself in.
Yeah. So that's a good segue. So everyone, brief synopsis of the film. After Hours, as Jeremy and I have just said, stars Griffin Dunn, right? That's how you pronounce his name, Dunn?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Griffin Dunn as Paul, who, as Jeremy just said, is, this entry-level corporate job office guy. As Jeremy just said, you summed it up really well about Paul. Yeah, it's fine. Bored with his life, bored at his home, at his job, goes to a coffee shop, meets a girl named Marcy, and tells her to call a friend of hers if he's interested in some Paris of plaster or plaster of Paris in the shape of bagels, paperweights. And he decides as soon as he gets home, I'm going to call this friend. And what ensues, as Jeremy just said, is a string of misadventures. All because he, if we're being honest, was kind of hoping maybe he'd get a little lucky tonight. Marcy is not the person that he thought she was. She's actually kind of crazy. And it's just one thing after the other. He is then mistaken for a burglar because there's been a string of burglaries in this area of New York. He meets so many crazy characters, and all he wants to do is he just wants to get home. That's all his end goal is at this point is I just want to get home. And he gets in at a punk club. He meets John Hurd and Catherine O'Hara before they were in Home Alone together.
That's right.
All kinds of crazy stuff. And that's After Hours. And the movie's very funny. Because I assume that we're... Yeah. Yeah. Mainly just because the misadventures... It's so funny. The movie is so genuinely funny. And I understand why it's considered a dark comedy, not just a comedy, because of a lot of the things Paul goes through that night, like with Marcy killing herself, for example.
Right.
But where should we begin? Do you think we should begin with Paul realizing that Marcy isn't who he thought she would be?
Well, I think we can start with where the story came from in the first place.
Okay.
So Scorsese was at this time trying to make The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was Paramount would say, okay, we're going to move it along. We're going to do this and this and this. And then like, well, wait, no, hold on. Never mind. Not anymore. Okay, yes. Now we'll try again. Okay, yes. Well, no, not anymore. Never mind. And this would just keep happening, and he just couldn't get it off the ground. And so, and this is a passion project of Scorsese. He is, he's champing at the bit. He cannot wait to make The Last Temptation of Christ, and so now it's he needs to find something else to do. So, I think like he meets Griffin Dunn. Griffin Dunn is a producer, and they have this script, and they're trying to work on it, and blah, blah, blah. And he gets together with Scorsese, and they just mesh so well. And they both understand the story and where they want to take it and all of that. Now, I will say that this story, the first bit of it is based on a Joe Frank monologue from 1982. And I don't know who Joe Frank is, but he might be someone like Spalding, who does like Grey's Anatomy and stuff like that.
Okay.
So here's the deal. Pretty much the setup is this whole monologue. Okay. So we have Paul meeting a girl at a coffee shop. She has a friend with these paper mache or these whatever paperweights, and do you want one? I don't know. Okay, fine, I'll go. And getting in the cab, losing his money clip, going to this chick's apartment and it being super weird, and her telling these stories about being raped and being like super bizarre, and being sort of airy and not really making a whole lot of sense, and then telling him these horrible stories and blah blah blah. So all of that is this guy's monologue, and the guy sued them and he got paid a settlement because you can't just take this guy's story, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But here's what I love about the story is that at first it's just a string of misadventures. It is one after the other where each thing sort of linearly follows the other one. It makes sense. I'm all on board. This guy's so unfortunate. It's very funny. He keeps just finding himself in these unfortunate situations, or just things just keep happening to him, like losing his money clip, and then having a guy actually try to help him out, but he needs to do a favor for him first, and all of that stuff. And getting distracted, and then going over to this other place, and then running into these people, and blah, blah, blah. But then it slowly devolves, slowly but surely, into something a little more nightmarish and a little bit more surreal the further we get along in the night, until it culminates with June, which I think is the most Lynchian part of the movie. And we'll get to it, but the original concept for the ending involved June, and it's insane. And I can't wait to talk to you about it, because it's nuts. And I would have loved it to end this way, but it doesn't. So, like, I'm trying to think of when that sort of de-evolution sort of culminates, and I think I can pinpoint it.
Okay.
I think that the moment this movie stops being this sort of weird, funny screwball comedy into this more surreal, what I would later come to find out is a yuppie nightmare cycle, which is a subgenre of films that include Blue Velvet, Naked, other examples, where these affluent yuppies find themselves in a very strange, surreal nightmare situation that's either played for drama or comedy. Anyway, it's when Tom, the bartender, is connected to Marcy. I think that's sort of, to me, that's where this movie sort of starts that de-evolution into surrealism, because what are the odds? And it's like these people are all connected that he's talking to, right? Everywhere he goes, that person is somehow connected to the person before, and like this place seems so small, yet it's New York City. And what I also love about just the set design is that the streets are practically empty, which I'm not familiar with Soho or New York City. I've never been. I don't know, but I would think even at 2 a.m. someone's out there, and not just a couple of people, but a bunch of people.
I mean, that is a city that never sleeps,
So I think I think the part that is so jarring, I think, is just that it just feels so isolating because the streets are so empty.
Well, and I think that's to add, because I kind of picked up very early on that the movie was very surreal. Mm-hmm. Pretty much almost immediately with all the Marcy scenes.
Yeah.
But I think it was also meant to add to Paul's anxiety about getting home, that, well, where is everyone?
Yeah.
Like where are all the people? And I really enjoyed that. aspect of it,
absolutely.
that it seems like it's only like a handful of people that are existing in this world right now, you know?
Yeah, it does seem it seems like a dream. Like, I know in some of my dreams, the ones I remember, it's when I'm trying to read something and I can't read it. Like it's like impossible. Like no matter how much I try, I can't read something. It just doesn't, the words are never clear to me. And,
Okay.
and also like the lighting is always sort of weird in dreams where like it's really, really dark, yet it's like in the middle of the day, things like that. And I think this is kind of what this feels like. You would think that Scorsese showed the movie to David Lynch and was like, how can I end this? Instead of him meeting with Spielberg, De Palma, and I think Lucas.
Terry Gilliam.
Oh, Terry Gilliam. All of his friends that, he grew up making movies with. He grew up in Hollywood. I mean, like in their professional careers, they all started at the same time and created New Hollywood. But yeah, I mean, it's, and some of the suggestions are crazy that he got from people like De Palma and Spielberg even. But yeah, I mean, it's just so dreamlike and yeah, surreal. I mean, we're probably gonna say that a million times.
Well, and it makes sense because again, you and I being disciples of Lynch, I feel like Lynch being sort of the, everything he touches is steeped in surrealism. And I think we're able to pick up on that because we can follow Lynch so well.
Yeah, I mean, we love Lynch, yeah.
And we've seen Twin Peaks backwards and forwards numerous times. So I feel like we're acutely tuned to know surrealism as soon as we see it. No, no, I'm not saying that we're the only people out there. I'm sure a lot of people can detect surrealism, but yeah, and it makes me wonder because we've already brought up Lynch, so I might as well do this. It makes me wonder. I know Scorsese would never compare himself to another director, but it does make me wonder if he was like, I want to try making my own Lynch film.
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems that way. It is. It gets so bizarre. Near starting in the middle and just careening towards the end of the movie. It's just so bizarre. It never lets up. I mean, especially with and I was all right. First off, holy shit, this cast is amazing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, how excited were you that Linda Florentino was in this movie? And that she's the sculptress.
So I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Besides, obviously, Catherine O'Hara, John Hurd, the burglars, I'm not going to reveal them just yet. I'm waiting for the opportune moment. The only other actor I really recognize, because I did recognize Griffin Dunn.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he's been in everything, and also he's in a show I really love, Frasier. He's in an episode where Frasier's really desperate to make a friend, and so he meets Griffin Dunn's character, and he's in a wheelchair. And like they kind of hit it off at first, but then like his personality starts to come out, and he's like obsessed with like barbecuing and wearing like Scottish style like hats, and he calls everyone constantly like ignorant bastards, and it doesn't work. And so Frasier tries to break up with him, like very like kind of like telling him the truth, like, we don't have any common interests. I'm sorry. And he's like, well, I wish you would have just told me it was about the wheelchair, man, because now you're telling me you just don't like me as a person. Like, I wish you would have told me like it was my wheelchair, why you don't want to be friends. And so Frasier like backpedals and is like, no, I lied. It is the wheelchair. But then that doesn't work out for Frasier. But anyway, so I recognize Griffin Dunn, and then Marcy. I was like, oh my god, I know who that is.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I never knew her name was Rosanna Arquette.
Yep, Rosanna Arquette. Yep, her and her then brother were in Pulp Fiction together. She
that's right.
What's that?
She's the crackhead that that calls Uma Thurman metal when they resuscitate her back to life.
Yeah, she's the one talking about all of her piercings and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that she's gotten them all done herself. Yeah.
And Linda Florentino, if you didn't even recognize her, which you might not have, but she's in Dogma. She's the woman who's in Dogma. Her character's name, but she's the main character. Give it a second.
Wait, you're saying Dogma as in Kevin Smith's Dogma?
Yeah.
She's
the one. She's the roommate. She's her friend that's making the sculpture in the beginning of the movie. Let's do this.
No, right. No, but what I'm saying is she's the person in Dogma that they recruit because she's like the
Yeah.
Here, hang on, because I'm still having a hard time. She's in the first. She's the mortician in Men in Black.
Yeah. Let's do this.
She doesn't look anything like that.
No, I know.
That's
I know. Yeah. Really, it's just her affect and her voice. That's how I recognized her the first time. Because she's kind of always like that. So.
I might need to rewatch the movie now because I
should.
Seeing her with short hair.
The short hair is crazy.
Yeah, especially considering in Dogma and in Men in Black, she has longer black hair.
Of course, yeah.
So, son of a bitch.
I know. And of course, Terry Garr. I mean, holy shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, she's really bizarre too in this. Everyone's sort of off center.
Yeah, even and this isn't saying much, but even Catherine O'Hara is a little bit off. I would say the only normal person is John Hurd.
Yeah.
John Hurd's the only one in the movie that who seems like he genuinely wants to help Paul. At least at first, and then he starts to kind of twiddle out a little bit and not be so sure of Paul later in the film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's been now accused of burglary. So.
Yeah. And then, of course, Cheech and Chong.
Yeah.
As the burglars, Neil and Pepe. Jesus Christ. But dude, it makes me laugh so hard because I recognize them immediately.
Of course.
Well, and also because their names show up in the opening credits. It made me laugh so hard that Tommy Chong was credited as Thomas Chong. I'm like, way to really try to class him up a little bit.
Yeah, dude, it's a full Christian name, huh? That's crazy. Go That's crazy.
It makes me wonder if they chose to do that because people would find that really funny. Like, Tommy Chong, nice.
Yeah, I liked that, I mean, there are big sorts of comedy in the movie, of course, but I liked that even though they knew that they acquired that stuff legally, that they were holding, they still dropped it as if they were in trouble. Like, they're just so used to stealing that they legit bought that and they just dropped it and ran,
Well, and I also think it's because, I mean, they go the rest of the movie stealing shit, so I'm sure that was the other reason.
I mean, they're the burglars,
Yeah. Which adds like such another level of surrealism that with Paul having to deal with everything that he's already been dealing with, now there's all these burglaries happening around SoHo, which is just insane B plot, like there's been 8 tonight. Like it's insane.
Which is also sort of funny because they're doing it so often and so fast, and it's so silly.
Harry and Marv really got to step up their game, man.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about, I mean, because obviously we have to, a lot of his misadventures, which stem from. So before we lean into that, hang on, I want to get this off my chest, and I will see if you agree. I don't know if I like Paul or not. Like when the movie started,
Paul's almost a blank slate. Almost.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. The reason why I say that is just because a lot of the things he says and does in the movie, I understand to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he's telling Julie about like, I'm going to come back in 2 minutes. Okay. You know, I get that it's like, okay, I need her off my back so I can go get my fucking keys back from Tom. But then like, I don't know, like his whole freak out with Marcy at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, that's kind of shitty, you know? Yeah. Like especially criticizing the weed that she's freely giving him. You know, like, what is that? Like, oh, they said it was Colombian. Well, it's bad shit. Like, don't buy from that guy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think how I read that interaction was he's trying to piss her off so she can kick him out. If she kicks him out, he's not leaving, right? So I think he was just trying to flip it to where, because if I leave, I'm abandoning this girl that invited me here. But if she kicks me out, I'm in the clear. And so I think that's what that was. That's how I read that. Well, I don't necessarily think he's a bad guy necessarily. But I mean, we just don't know. We just don't know anything about him.
I agree. You know what? I recount my statement about I don't know if I like Paul or not. That makes sense. I think, I mean, he for sure, 100%, agreed to come see her because he thought he was going to get lucky. I 100% believe that.
Of course.
But I think you're right. I think he realized she's too much of a wild card.
Dude, she's so weird.
She's so bizarre. She lets me kiss her, then starts crying. Like, I don't. Which, of course, we learned it's because technically she was cheating,
right.
On Tom. But so I like that. That makes sense. That he doesn't want to be perceived as the asshole for just being like, this date's over, deuces, but it's okay. I like that.
And I mean, he's also like, I mean, he's so far out of his element. And like whenever he goes back to the apartment and finds her dead, Marcy dead, I really liked that, he's really got to go because he's, it's not that he thinks he's going to get, I mean, maybe after a while, he just thinks he's going to get blamed for anything. Which is one of the funniest lines in the whole movie is
when he witnesses that lady killing her husband. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get blamed for that too.
I'm gonna get blamed for that, and just like, that was so funny. But he needs to go because he's doing this key thing, right?
Yeah,
and I just love that his idea of I'll just put up signs.
Writes on paper towels and tapes them. Dead person's
that way. That made me laugh. But again, the I'm probably gonna get blamed for that line. I mean, I laughed so hard at that. And again, but I mean, that's of course the crescendo of the surrealism and the nightmare situation that he's in.
And that stems from Julie, who I want to know how the fuck she was able to make so many copies of this, wanted sign so quickly. But pretty much preys on the fear that everyone in Soho is feeling about these burglaries, by using a sketch she made of Paul, and saying that he's the burglar. And of course, this is New York. They're not going to listen to reason if Paul says it's not me,
right? Of course.
So they decide to form a mob and chase his ass down. I also really love that he's recounting all of this to this dude who clearly thinks he's a prostitute, which also made me laugh.
Yeah.
This whole like, I've never done this with a man before. And I love the fact that Paul doesn't even try to acknowledge, like, do you think I'm a prostitute? You know,
Nope, blew right past it. Not important.
But I love that Paul recaps the entire movie up to this point to this guy. That made me laugh. Just his whole, like, you know, and then she's dead. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, it's so good.
Yeah, you know, and that's one of the, you know, it's. I was trying to do well. No, yeah, his story is impossible to believe, and it's you know, poor guy. You know, I mean, I felt bad for him, but it is so silly that he is just the one night he goes out, he is just in this crazy new world that he just can't get ahead of, and yeah, all right. There was something I was going to say. Oh, Catherine O'Hara! Holy Jesus! So when I saw her name in the opening, I was like, "Oh shit, Catherine O'Hara! That's exciting."
Yeah.
I didn't realize she would have such a huge role as Gail, and so significant. But yeah, her when he first meets her, that's sort of like, again, I do believe that the sort of the tipping point is the reveal that Tom is Marcy's boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's sort of the tipping point of like, that's so weird, you know? And then possibly, you know, Club Berlin is a Mohawk night is pretty bizarre.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I think Tom or Paul starts to suspect that Marcy might be Tom's girlfriend when he does kind of the skeevy thing of lifting up the sheets.
Yeah.
But he notices her tattoo of the skull with the top hat.
Yeah.
And then looks at Tom's keys. So I think he already has a suspicion. Like,
even that's bizarre, right? Because, like, yeah, like, I guess, like, you can make that connection, but in reality, that doesn't make any sense. Why would she get a tattoo of something that he has on his keychain? Like, you know, to put that together isn't very logical. And so you wouldn't immediately jump to that conclusion. And so I think that it's still bizarre.
yeah.
And still, like, what are the odds? I mean, the coincidences that happen in this movie are, I think, what make up the majority of the surrealism. Is just, you know, like, come on, man, what are the odds of that? Like, how are all these things connected? It's crazy. Like, he, like, meeting, what is her name? Kiki is the, is Linda Florentine. You know, her being a paper mache sculptress, and then at the end with June, she does the same thing. You know?
Yeah.
What are the odds of that? What are the odds that she puts him in a very similar pose as the sculpture that he was working on with her?
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to lie. I had paused the movie at one point to take the dogs out. And like I've mentioned on the show many times, I read the plot of the movie we're doing just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. Especially when it's one is layered, as like when we did like the Phantom Carriage, for example.
Sure.
But this one, I knew what was going on, but I was like, I just need just a little bit, you know. And I did kind of read ahead, so I kind of knew what was coming. But reading it, and it said like to a similar pose as the statue, I was like, oh my god, is this going to be like a dream logic kind of? Like, I thought it was about to get super surreal.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, damn, Martin Scorsese's going for it. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
So I thought like the reveal of him in the paper mache statue is like he was going to be revealed to be the statue that Kiki was working on, and that it was going to be like a time that I thought it was going to get super weird. Again, maybe it's because I've seen too many Lynch films. But then when that scene comes around, I was like, oh, okay, no, like whoever was writing this just legitimately was just saying that he's in a similar pose in a way.
Which, I mean, is still significant, but it's, again, it's just a coincidence that it's like, that's so bizarre that, that's happening, what are the odds?
Yeah.
Man, I thought I had this movie figured out when he met June. I was like, man, I got it. And then it wasn't true. So I guess we can talk about it for a second.
Okay, well, yeah. So I want to ask. So what did you think was gonna happen after he met June?
When he goes back into Club Berlin, and it is now this this performance art showcase, or this performing arts piece that I guess it's June's, where it's like a bar, but there's only one person that's invited, and it is very, it's very posh, pretentious, performance art, right?
Yeah.
And then he meets June, and I don't remember him saying his name, and so when she calls him Paul, I was like, okay, that's weird that she knows his name. So like, okay, like, is this whole thing like a Dante's Inferno thing? I'm like, is all of this analogy, which I would really like. And then it all sort of, that whole thing of her being a representation of like the devil or death or something, sort of went out the window when the mob came back. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's over. I was like, never mind. But one of the ideas they had for the ending, which I teased at the beginning, is they were dude, first off, I'm not making this up. Second, I'm thinking maybe a better ending, at least for an audience member like myself.
Okay.
The ending would have been him hiding from the mob by crawling into June's womb and her giving birth to him on like Fifth Avenue at the end of the
okay.
So let's say that would have happened. All right. First off, amazing. Like I would have been blown away if that had been the ending, because it would have in a way made sense, because the movie's only getting stranger as the movie progresses, and you could argue the ending is also very strange.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that the ending isn't super weird, and symbolic and important, and it makes sense, and it's a great ribbon that ties the movie together. Like, we'll talk about that in a minute, but the idea of this nightmare surreal ending, and sort of, it's an absurd ending, which I also would have, I just would have loved it. I think that would have been really interesting, and it would have given more agency and more significance to June, and it would have made a little bit more sense of why June is so important, and why she is acting so strange, and why Paul is so gravitated towards her. But that's not what happened. But I mean, I don't remember who pitched that idea. It might have been De Palma. It sounds like
yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like Brian De Palma, or not even Terry Gilliam. It sounds like Gilliam. A Brian. Yeah,
maybe Gilliam. Maybe you're right. Because Scorsese had no idea. He had no idea how he was getting in this movie. He goes, "I'm stuck. I don't know." And Spielberg pitched the idea that he gets stuck in the paper mache and driven back to work. And that ended up being the ending, which perfectly sums up the movie and what it all means, right? Or the point, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is also highlighted in the song he picks at the art bar. I'm going to call it the art bar.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is Peggy Lee's rendition of Is That All There Is? Because Paul just wanted something different. He wanted a change. He wanted an adventure. He wanted something to break him out of this mundane life that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, he's incredibly disappointed.
Yeah.
And because, and of course, the song is That All There Is? Because he's like, is this it? This is what it's like to break out of my mundane life? Is this?
Yeah.
And the ending is so perfect because he doesn't even get to go home.
Yeah.
He has to go back to his menial, meaningless life at work.
Yeah. Which again is honestly, I know you would have liked the whole womb birthing thing, but I think this is the funnier ending.
Sure.
That, he literally breaks out of the cocoon he's in, and looks up and is like, I might as well just go back to work. And I love that's how it ends.
Yeah.
That he's essentially the first one to work, and he just sits there like,
the computer saying "Good morning, Paul," and I really liked the shot, the in tracking shot.
Oh, of the camera going around the office.
Yeah, I really like that.
Everyone's coming in, and I like that you can clock a few people seeing Paul, and they're like, what? Because he's covered in
plaster,
glue,
and
and I honestly think that's a funnier ending.
Sure,
because it also makes me wonder if maybe he, in that brief little period when Cheech and Chong pick him up and they're driving away, if he managed to actually kind of fall asleep and get a little bit of sleep.
I hope so. Because, I mean, I'm assuming it took them at least an hour or two to get from where they were to the city. So hopefully he got some sleep. Although the reveal that he's... Okay, so I knew he was in the paper mache. But the reveal of the mouth and eye hole cutouts, hilarious. I don't know why it made me laugh so hard, but just that they were perfect eye and mouth hole. I mean, it was like a cartoon. It just made me laugh. I just wasn't expecting it to be that animated, I guess. Or
well, and I was going to say that probably was to add to the surrealism that it looks like a perfectly cut out man.
Yeah,
but also at the same time being like, a man wouldn't hide in here. But yeah, man. Again, I think that ending is so funny because you're right. He doesn't even get to go home.
He didn't get to go home,
and that's what he's been saying since he meets Tom, John Hurt's character. I just want to go home.
Yeah, my buddy Hunter messaged me on Messenger today because I posted. Every week I try to post the movie trailer for the movie we're doing this week on Monday, and so I did this week, and he just said, I just want to go home. That's what he messaged me. And hopefully he's listening. So Hunter, I hope you're listening to this one. I hope you're doing okay. But yeah, I mean, poor guy. I mean, it's just so it's the perfect ending for his night of adventure. It only makes sense for him just to go back to work. Where he feels the most mundane, and it's almost, a part of me is like, he's probably just happy to be back because, he saw what is out there and he can now appreciate his lower stakes life, I think.
Almost like finally something familiar, which, I mean, but it also makes sense with the whole, because I did think it was a little weird that he puts on a tie while he's at Club Berlin. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's a little weird, but it makes sense because now he's back at work in a suit. So
in the same suit he wore. Just a different shirt.
It does make me wonder, though, if, kind of thinking about in context of the movie, if like his boss or something saw him and was like, "Why are you dressed like this? Why do you look like, go home?" And he's like, "I don't have my keys."
Oh, that's right. He never got his keys.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah, because Tom turns his back on him when the mob tracks him down to that fucking diner.
That's right.
And he pleads, like, I will say, I don't have many qualms with this movie, or any. And this isn't really a qualm, it's just me being kind of nitpicky. I don't like the fact that he like is pleading with Tom, like, I didn't steal from you. I'm not a thief. These people think I'm a thief. They're gonna kill me. Like, please talk some sense into them. And Tom like flips.
I know, yeah.
He's like, he's in the diner. And I'm like, oh, come on, Tom.
Come on, Tom, be cool.
I know.
So a few times in the movie, and I think it's just to heighten the anxiety of the situation he's in, he will begin a task, whether it be he promises someone something, he's going to do something for someone, he starts doing something, and then he has to go to the next thing without finishing the other thing. Like he orders food at that diner, which eventually he goes back and he gets the food. The guy looks super pissed because it's been like an hour or whatever. But I saw somewhere, or I read somewhere, that Griffin Dunn, right when he was about to go shoot the performance art piece with June, that he was at a bar and said he would buy the next round for everyone, and he left without paying. Just so he can know what it feels like to do that, to start something and not finish it. And just have that sort of lingering, thing sort of hovering over him, that fear and that anxiety. Good job. I think he did go back and pay it, but
I would hope so. I would hope that maybe he like just stepped outside for a little bit and was like, this is what it feels like. Okay.
Oh no, he went back and he shot the scene first. He shot some stuff first and then went, because he needed it for that scene. He needed that feeling for it. I assume he went back. They didn't say.
Imagine he never went back and there's like a sign on the wall in that bar that's like, if you ever see Griffin Dunn, he owes us this. It's been like accruing interest since the 80s.
That's funny. Since 85.
Or I guarantee, since 85, but honestly, I guarantee they probably have forgotten. Like, well, another jag-off who didn't pay his tab.
It's been 40 years.
I would say that, I think that's the most thing that gave me anxiety, is that, you're right, that he would be like, okay, this is the next thing I need to get done. Okay, well, now I'm taking on this side quest. Okay, I'm going to do that side quest. Well, hang on. Now I got to loop back to,
Well, a lot of it is just because he can't complete one without the other. And so, like, he's leaving all these loose ends because he's having to pick up other ones to complete the other ones. And it's just, it's almost like a sitcom, Yeah. He's finding himself in these situations. I think another reason why we feel so much anxiety outside, and while he is in between these scenes, is of course Howard Shore. It's the score. It's because there's always there's a ticking clock embedded in the score, and so we're always just maybe unconsciously aware that there is this ticking clock.
Didn't we do another movie recently where the composer put a ticking clock underneath the score?
It wasn't recently. This was years ago, but it was in Dunkirk. It also might have been Howard Shore. No, it's Hans Zimmer, right?
I was going to say, Chris Nolan really only uses Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, that's true. They used Nolan's pocket watch for the ticking of that score, but this one just has you can hear it playing as day. I mean, it's not hiding at all from you. The ticking. Yet when he's inside or with someone, they're usually playing music that's pretty mellow. that's pretty easy listening and, you know, sort of calming. And but once he steps outside, it's this Howard Shore score. And it's unusual, at least at this time. Scorsese doesn't really use original scores. He did for Taxi Driver, but other than Taxi Driver, it was that one and this one.
Yeah, because he usually uses
music.
Yeah, music. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting.
That sounds so dumb. If we were to read that, what we just said, he doesn't use an original score. He uses music.
Songs. He uses songs.
Like popular songs.
Well, I did also read that this is one of the few movies of his that isn't an adaptation or a biopic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I was like, there's no way. And then I went back and I was like, oh, no. I mean, The Irishman is a biopic. Shutter Island was an adaptation.
Goodfellas, Casino, Age of Innocence is an adaptation of a novel. The Silence, I think, is an adaptation of a novel.
Silence, yeah. Killers of the Flower Moon.
Adaptation of a novel. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But I mean, man, again, I'm so glad to be blown away by how funny the movie is.
Yeah.
How dark it is. But not like dark in the sense of like now we're borderline on drama, but just, you know, dealing with a suicide and then a mob that wants to kill you. And, you know,
well, he says they want to kill him, but really they just want to, you know, however, in his mind, you know, he's like, this is, you know, again, he's a yuppie. He's not used to, you know, you know, he's not used to, you know, this sort of lifestyle, I suppose. I don't know. He's he thinks of yuppie in this case is, I'm assuming, used derogatorily. Like, it's used for someone who has very little life experience, is very well off, is very waspy, is, you know, sort of, you know, affluent and privileged and all of that. And so when he finds himself in these situations, it's all very scary and it's heightened because of his perception of it all. And so when he says they're trying to kill me, he may literally mean that, but really they just want to, you know.
They probably just want to take him to the... Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But again, we never get that clarification in the film, especially considering the one time he calls the cops. They're like, yeah, just go home and sleep it off, buddy. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, with that being said, Jeremy, are you ready to wrap up?
I
am. Yeah, man, I'm glad you enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't think you wouldn't. I mean, again, as we've talked about, Martin Scorsese, just like Robert Eggers at the top of the show, can't miss, never can miss.
Right.
And again, like I just said, it is so refreshing to see him do something that's not typical of him, and he just knocks it out of the park.
So here's the noops I forgot.
Okay.
In the diner, and it made me so happy. So in the first one where he's reading The Tropic of Cancer, and when he meets Marcy for the first time, there is a couple, an older couple, sitting behind him in the diner and off to the right of the screen. And as soon as I saw her, I grinned, and I was so excited I recognized her because that is Martin Scorsese's mom, who plays Joe Pesci's mom in Goodfellas. And that's how I recognize her. I go, oh my God, that's Marty's mom.
Well, and then of course, Marty himself is in the movie.
Yes, he is in
as the spotlight.
And he's dressed like Stalin or something. I don't know what he's wearing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's Mohawk Night, I'm sure it's something to do with, you know, the army or something.
Mohawk Night, man.
Yeah. Well, that being said, buddy, so we're kind of getting towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
And I have one more pick, but next week is your final pick of the show before our end of season series,
right.
which is also your pick.
Right. Well,
so, but what are we talking about next week? I already know what it is.
You already know. Yeah. I'm excited because I get to talk about a few things that I'm obsessed with.
Okay.
One, we get to open the audio portion of our episode. We get to open it with Elton John, so I'm excited about that.
Nice.
We get to talk about one of the greatest directors ever, which is Sidney Lumet.
Well, we did 12 Angry Men.
That's true. So we get to talk about Sidney Lumet again, which is great. And we get to talk about John Chazelle, which I don't know if we talked about him enough in our Godfather episodes. But here's a little fun fact for those of you who don't follow along and who are just not listening to us or whatever. John Chazelle was in 5 movies. That's it. He was in The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Our Next Pick, and The Deer Hunter, all of which were nominated for Best Picture, all of which won Academy Award. And yeah, I mean, he's the good luck charm of all good luck charms. One of the greatest character actors ever to live. He is acting alongside Al Pacino in next week's episode, which is Dog Day Afternoon. And I'm very excited.
So I know we've talked about this movie on the show before, and I feel like I admitted to you that I'd never seen it.
That's okay.
But I'm excited, man, because I mean I love Al Pacino. I think he is, of course, so fantastic. Even as he's gotten older, you know, I love his character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, he's good.
But I love watching young Al Pacino, especially young handsome Al Pacino, just because, yes, he's the same person and actor, but you can tell a young man versus an old man. And you've told me about the movie and its tension and how just fantastic it is, and it's made me excited.
Oh yeah.
So I'm glad we're finally getting to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very excited. Yeah, true story. Which is equally as bizarre as the movie suggests it is. So yeah, I mean, I recommend looking it up. The true story, that we have some context. And yeah, Al Pacino's amazing, and of course John Chazelle is always and forever will be. Yeah. So
and this is after they played brothers in.
So this is a year after Godfather Part 2.
So this is after the infamous Fredo kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, awesome, man. Can't wait for next week. Well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed this episode on After Hours, and we'll see you next week for Dog Day Afternoon.